Long before banks existed, before coins were minted, and long before numbers were printed on paper bills, humanity was already dealing with something that would become the most powerful invisible force in the world: the idea of exchange. And it's within this idea that the real history of money begins, a story far older, more complex, and far more surprising than most people ever imagine. Many believe that money was created simply because people needed an easier way to trade. But the truth is, that's only a comfortable simplification. Money didn't appear because people wanted convenience. In most civilizations, it emerged as a tool of control, social organization, and above all, power. And this story must be told from the very beginning, when money wasn't even money yet, but merely a matter of survival. Imagine living in a world with no currency, no bills, no cards, and no banks. A world where every object had value only for what it physically was. If you grew wheat and someone else caught fish, the exchange seemed simple. You give me wheat, I give you fish. But in reality, this romantic idea of bartering is mostly a myth. Since the first villages existed, bartering rarely worked the way school books describe. It had major flaws. The first problem was obvious: the double coincidence of wants. You couldn't trade fish if the other person didn't want fish at that exact moment. Maybe they'd want it in 2 days, but by then, the fish would be rotten. And even if both sides wanted to trade, another obstacle appeared: value. How much was a fish worth compared to 3 clay pots? How much was an animal hide worth compared to a sack of grain? Each person had their own idea of value, creating endless conflict. And then came the third problem: goods spoil. Most items people owned in early civilizations deteriorated quickly. This is where a crucial piece of the story appears. Societies began to realize they needed something that represented value without depending on weather, time, or physical conditions. Something that could be stored, transported, and accepted by everyone. This something had to be durable, rare enough to be valuable, and easy to recognize. But it wasn't gold. Not yet. What few people know is that in the oldest civilizations, money first emerged as a system of recorded debts. These debts were documented in ways that seem primitive today, but were incredibly advanced for their time. In the Middle East, over 5,000 years ago, the first Mesopotamian cities used clay tablets to record what one person owed another. These inscriptions were made by official scribes, turning debts into public commitments. These clay tablets were money because they represented value recognized by the community. They weren't coins or paper notes. They were formalized debts. And more than that, they were tools of social control. Back then, in cities like Uruk, Ur, and Lagash, economic power was centralized in temples and palaces. These institutions stored grains, oils, textiles, and various resources. People delivered part of their production as tribute, and in exchange, they received clay records that guaranteed the right to withdraw specific amounts later. In other words, money began as a receipt. It wasn't an object of value in itself. It was a written promise. Over time, these receipts began circulating among people. If someone held a tablet guaranteeing a certain amount of barley, they could transfer it to someone else in exchange for goods or services. Money began not as a commodity, but as a representation of a claim. So why did gold eventually become so important? The answer is a combination of 3 factors: durability, beauty, and rarity. Gold doesn't rust, rot, or fade. It has always carried a symbolic, almost spiritual aura. Many cultures considered it the metal of the gods, and it was hard to find and difficult to extract. This natural scarcity created an inherent sense of value, even without the need for authorities to enforce it. But before gold became coinage, countless other items were used as early forms of money. Salt, for example, served as payment, hence the word salary. Shells were widely used across parts of Africa and Oceania. grains, textiles, different metals, and even giant stone discs with holes in the center, like the famous rhinestones of Yap Island in the Pacific. All of these worked as money because they solved one essential problem. They stored value in a durable way. The major turning point happened in Lydia, in what is now Turkey, around 700 BCE. There, the first standardized metal coins were created. These early coins made from electrum, a natural mix of gold and silver, carried an official seal. This seal, stamped by a recognized authority, guaranteed value. This was revolutionary. For the first time, the worth of money didn't come from personal negotiation. It was declared. From that moment onward, money became a political instrument. Governments used it to control economies, collect taxes, fund armies, and expand territories. Money wasn't just a tool for transactions. It became a system of centralized power. But money continued to evolve. As empires grew and trade routes expanded, carrying heavy bags of coins became impractical. To solve this, the first banks emerged. Merchants deposited gold and silver in secure storage houses and received paper receipts guaranteeing their holdings. These papers began circulating as money because people believed they could be exchanged for the metal inside the vault. Thus, paper money was born. Then something even more dramatic happened. Bankers realized that almost no one withdrew their gold all at once. So they started issuing more receipts than the amount of gold they actually held. This became the foundation of the modern banking system, a world where most money exists not physically, but as numbers and promises. And this leads us to the most important point. Money has never been just an object. It has always been a social construction built on trust. Trust that a paper bill is worth something. Trust that a bank balance is real. Trust that the government backs the currency. Money is ultimately a collective story, a narrative we all agree to participate in. Today, after thousands of years of clay tablets, shells, salt, metals, coins, receipts, and paper money, we've arrived at digital currencies. Numbers on a screen that are valued not because they physically exist, but because society believes they do. And now, cryptocurrencies add a new chapter, a decentralized money created by code rather than governments, but still depend on the same ancient principle, trust. The true history of money is a history of humanity attempting to solve practical problems, structure societies, control resources, create systems, and above all, prevent chaos. From clay tablets to digital wallets, everything about money reflects our ability to take an idea and make it powerful enough to move entire civilizations. And this story is far from over. Money will keep evolving, and with it, the way we live. But one thing will never change. Money only exists because we believe in it. It is and always has been the greatest collective invention of our species.